Welcome, everybody, back to According to Carlo. Well, today you're not going to believe this, but we have a very interesting and special guest. And I can't thank the Peel Police enough for this, but we have the chief of police, Nishan Duraiappah. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah.
So, but we'll just more affectionately call him Nish, and if that's okay.
That's perfect, Carlo.
So look, this is really new. This is really different for us because it's not so much real estate related, but it's leadership related. So why don't you start by giving us a little background on where you came from and how you got into policing?
I was born in Sri Lanka, and my parents immigrated when I was almost a year old, and we moved to Canada, which is, for leaving a country like that, the vision is, you're providing a future, obviously, like many immigrant stories are, for your kids to become successful, right?
Of course.
But policing was never one of the options that my parents would have ever thought of. But fast forward, when I was in high school, I was aiming, obviously, I was thinking about doing law.
And where was high school?
In Milton.
Okay.
I grew up in Milton. After living in Toronto for a bit, we moved to Milton. My parents got a job out on the West End in Mississauga. And so that was, at that time, Milton was just growing. It was,
of course,
probably, 20,000 maybe. And in high school, one of my teachers came up to me and said, "Hey, Nish, what are you doing for the summer?" And back then it was like telemarketing and flipping burgers, which is,
of course,
nothing wrong with that. But it was a program, a summer placement with the local police department, with Halton Police. I'm like, this is going to be more exciting than what my peers are doing. Okay, fast forward through that. That was an amazing summer. And not only did I get exposed to people who just watch TV to get a little feel to see what policing's about, I ended up meeting the people that looked after me in the program, the officers. They became like kind of mentors to me, and sort of, it's a very relationship based story. And it wasn't just the uniform, it was the relationships. Like when I went on to university, they'd check in with me, see how they're doing. My mom would make like tandoori chicken. We'd drop it off at the division. And so fast forward, when I was done in university, we're just coming out of the social contracts in the Ray days. They started hiring again. And I got a call from a recruiter, which is one of the officers that looked after me, and said, "Hey, our calculations are that you're probably finishing school right now. Would you be interested in applying?" And I thought, hey, well, I'll give it a run. And sure enough, I was 21 and started my policing career.
In the Halton Police Force.
And Halton Police. And I spent 25 years there. Great communities, great organization, allowed me to kind of flourish. And then in 2019, the opportunity to come to Peel Regional Police as a chief was there. So
how did it go from, obviously you started at the bottom. In the police force.
That's right.
How did it go, and what changed your career path to get you to this level?
Hey, so it's like, I think everybody has in policing, which is remarkable, whether you're a civilian or sworn member, you have a different pathway. You can work 30 years in the same function, or you can move around. And for me, early on in my career, I started doing drug enforcement, drug work, undercover work. I didn't look like an atypical cop. And so I was young, single. So it was a really exciting thing to do. And my first promotion, I remember the chief calling me, was, "Hey, Nish, you're going to community policing and you're going to be in charge of our diversity and cultural relations." I was like, this is a complete deviation. But
wow.
What I discovered was there are so many different functions within policing that bring you different growth experiences and exposures. So I went from that back to investigations. I had an opportunity to go to the business side of the house, from the policy, admin, IT, infrastructure, back to operations, and throughout the different ranks, basically got exposed to a cross section of different experiences that drive policing, and eventually got to the rank of deputy chief in charge of frontline operations in Halton. And that's from where I made the jump over to Peel.
Okay. So obviously you mentioned, it's interesting how you mentioned relationships. I mean, our business is all about relationships.
Yes.
Especially in your field, you would have relationships with community members, community enforcement people. I mean, obviously the police force, but you still had to have those relationships built over the many years with, higher ranking politicians or community leaders, like I mentioned. There was obviously something about you that people, gravitated to. Was there a defining moment in your life where you determined that you were going to be this kind of a leader?
Yeah. So, you know what? I think in all experiences, you draw from other people, right? the good and the bad. Like, I think I remember things about people. It was more of an aha moment of what not to do, right? My approach has always been very heavily relationship based. I think relationships make the world turn.
Of course.
And in order for that to happen, your style of leadership is kind of rooted in that as a value set. Like, I remember seeing, old school police officers that are very like autocratic, traditional. What you would think back in the 90s or even before that is the stereotypical cop. And I would think, wow, I'm clearly not like that. As time went on, I actually ended up realizing that was an asset, actually, to be more conciliatory, focus on the relationship. So no, not one single turning point, but eventually I realized that who I was and how I showed up was actually quite effective. They say, we all know when people have those soft skills, they have a hard impact, especially in a team environment or like a high pressure work environment. They actually get you through those, like the crunch times, right?
Not to be over complimentary, but when I met you at the Chair's house,
yes,
and I said, wow, this guy's just like, you're absolutely right. You're not a stereotypical police chief. When I met you, I go, this guy's just really nice. He's really soft spoken. He was really friendly. And it's not what we kind of seen growing up. It was just big, tough guys, right? Who probably had no conciliatory ability, perhaps. But I mean, in your world, I guess the world has changed and you need to be that way. And that's why you're here today, because I said, I would just love to have the chief come on and speak to us, because I just was so impressed by your demeanor.
People feel like you have to make hard, decisive decisions, feel like you're coming across strong, bold. And that's particularly in our environment, people may expect that because it's a lot of crisis related activities. I think in those times, yes, but you got to vacillate to different things. And I'm still waiting for the shoe to drop. I don't find that as the dominant quality for team environments or leading teams or decision making. I think it allows other people to contribute to the conversation more, which to me, I think is really a powerful thing, because you're empowering people around you to contribute to the end state and your end goal.
Yeah. And of course, in your position, we have so many cultural communities that you really need to navigate and make sure you understand all the cultural differences that people have in order for you to do your job. Our level of pressure is obviously not as significant or as important as what the pressures that you're under, but we deal with daily pressures as well. Obviously, you've gone through a lot of media training to speak to the public and whatnot, but tell us about the pressures that, sometimes it must be insurmountable, the pressure that you're under and dealing with the issues that you must deal with day to day.
Yes. We have a variety of vectors of pressure. Obviously, most obvious one the public would think of is crime and crime trends and rates. But we have the interests of a lot of communities. You think about geopolitical, transnational issues. We have we've got financial pressures as well. You have the expectations of everybody in the community that wants to be served. And you're right. And particularly in Peel, where we're probably the most diverse region nationally, everybody has different perspectives on what safety and well-being is, and they have different demands. In fact, many communities are all feeling different pressures at the same time, and we have to be everything to everyone. So we've gone through things like post-George Floyd, really macro-related issues that affected like public trust, community relationships, directly with policing. And I've matured over time. My team, my executive leadership team, and I spend a lot of time when there is crisis and pressure, not rushing through decision making. I'm not a big Brene Brown reader, but if you look at some of her research and podcasts she's done with, particularly like Obama, there's a lot of studies that show if you, from a business standpoint or decision making standpoint, stop and dwell in the middle of pressure and crisis, and you're able to straddle that moment, you make better decisions.
Of course.
You could apply that to your like home relationships, your family. And so, we learned that the hard way, because couple of times during crisis, we thought we were making the right decision. We rushed because we thought we knew what we were doing. And we had to put our hands up after and say, that was wrong. It didn't work out well for our people, or maybe for the substantive issue. We've now since then have learned from that and reiterate. So I think that is a really good quality in decision making when you're dealing with pressure, because we all also joke. We say, like, with pressure and stress comes diamonds, right? And you joke about that because you end up with a better outcome. So that is definitely one principle we apply regularly, and all things end up passing, actually. So it's never really at its worst.
Right.
And so we use all those crises as a growth experience.
So in our business, the real estate business, obviously community safety, community policing is important to real estate values.
Yes.
And so tell us, what is it that we can do better as the community? How is it that we can help the police make communities safer?
Yeah, Carl, hey, thank you for offering that in the first place. And we are a strong proponent of the non-traditional approach to community safety and well-being. It's public safety or crime is what people focus on, but what we're talking about is having healthy communities from which, you're particularly with your industry, a good, safe, well-kept community, you can thrive, your business thrive, people, communities thrive. So the historic way of looking at like safety and well-being has been in silos, in my view. Policing's been responsible for this. Health has been responsible for this. Business community has been responsible for this. But the view that everything should be a multi-sector collaborative approach to public safety is now the foremost contemporary view on it, which means that it's a shared responsibility. It's not policing walking away or absconding from their role, but for solutioning things in the community, we find that like the business community, all the other sectors, if we come together and do sort of like a systems related approach, you can get upstream and turn the dial down. So for you, without a doubt, let's just say property owners, businesses, commercial or otherwise, to contribute to public safety related issues is remarkable. We've seen, for example, at the business level, if you've got a commercial property or residential property, the ability for people to do with it what they can within their own to enhance safety, security, whether it's cameras, lighting, all the traditional things, and going one step further and inviting us to be able to partner with them to have access. We've had a lot of large commercial real estate property owners come forward and say, hey, listen, we have like lots of social disorder on our properties. What can we do to help? And we said, hey, listen, are we able to access your CCTV from time to time?
Right.
There's a lot of things they can do with us. And it doesn't have to be an infringement on people's privacy, but if we can get quick access to them, we can resolve things. If it's residential, communities, there's a lot of informal ways for communities to be stitched together. It's somewhat like an informal guardian mentality where everybody takes ownership for their neighbors, each other, and communities, shares the information. Like we know, there's a lot of WhatsApp groups.
Yes, we have one. Our neighborhood has one, and it's amazing what goes on in between the neighborhoods.
So one thing we've recognized this last year is that drives misinformation or information.
Yes, I can see that. Yeah.
But one thing we started last year at Peel is a community ambassador program. Take the name out of it. Is we found one person in each of these, if they are willing to volunteer to be linked to us, we can provide them real-time info like crime prevention, or we can dispel something that maybe that's misinformation flowing, and they can flood it through their WhatsApp group. So that's a perfect example of somebody in their community quite really effortlessly having a formal connection with us. And it allows us to receive information really in real time too. And we also are able to leverage that to help. If there's a trend happening, want people to be aware, we can do that. So there's a lot of like that connectivity that can happen. And obviously the traditional ones where people are looking after their properties and real estate together.
But you must also find some counterproductive things that go on. A lot of misinformation, a lot of people saying things and doing things. And how do you, within communities, how do you deal with misinformation, especially on crime or any other thing that's happening in the communities?
Yeah, so this is something we struggle with quite a bit because, yes, there are some real issues in certain communities, and the mechanism for us to communicate that. It comes through real like legitimate platforms like us, or, to a certain respect, responsible media. But the informal platforms, the social media, the WhatsApp, Instagram Reels, can really drive harmful. You can brand a community in a neighborhood very poorly. If the information it's misinformation.
So that just adds a whole nother dimension to what you guys have to do. My goodness.
It does. And the direct correlation to you, obviously a desirable community is good for your industry.
Of course.
And people's perception of desirable communities can be driven by misinformation. So yes, we encourage people, if they're not sure, to call. There are real accessible platforms that can give the right, correct information. We always ask people to validate them. And we feel bad because we want communities to be healthy and vibrant, and some neighborhoods or communities can get branded very poorly on a certain crime trend. And hey, listen, all the things that make our community vibrant, beautiful, diverse also get exploited for negative reasons too, right? And their vulnerabilities. So, yes, good information, asking the right questions. If people aren't clear, particularly about risk or compromise in their community, we have in every possible neighborhood our community liaison officers. So that would be another opportunity, Carlo. Like if communities want more, or us to come speak to you, like cross industry, like bilaterally, there's so many great opportunities that would help inform not just residents, business owners, but your industry in itself. So
there's mechanisms appeal that we can call on and say, hey, listen, we'd like you to come and speak to someone and speak to our group and do things like that.
Yes. Yeah. We've got like a exclusively non-police response officers and community officers that their sole role is to go out and mobilize communities. So they call divisional mobilization teams. They're unique to each community. They know their community inside out.
That sounds awesome.
And we have CERT teams. And their role is, like, say if we have a problem neighborhood, it could be traffic related. It could be, loitering or things that are causing concern. Our teams can come out, meet with property owners, business owners, co-design a response, and then they proactively go and try to turn the dial down and respond to it. And we've seen a lot of success in the last calendar year. We've been able to, with some new teams doing that, been able to hit some really high priority areas. Yeah. And they can also do the conversations to community groups, the town halls. We believe that is the grassroots feel is absolutely the best way to communicate good info.
I mean, without law and order, not because you're here, but without law and order, we don't have much. And in any community, as we can see what goes on. I really wish it would be awesome if people had a better appreciation of what, I've known several police officers, so I ask them a lot of questions and what they go through. I had a good friend I went to grade school with who was an undercover cop in narcotics. And I was shocked at what the risks that he would take. Are there community initiatives where people can actually go see what you guys do safely, of course, because I don't think people really understand the risks and the pressures you guys are under on a daily basis. Just going to a simple wellness check, how dangerous that can be. Do you have the media or do you have people from the communities come and see, obviously from a safe distance, what you guys actually do so they appreciate the pressures you're under?
Yeah, there's back when I started, the ability to do a ride along was possible. Now, just by the sheer busyness out there, it's not possible to come out and see it. But there are a lot of positive ways for the community to have a line of sight to what's happening. We have a variety of community-based programs that allow citizens to be a part of almost like a resource council to us. And it's meant to be both ways flowing, where we provide them updates on initiatives, things that they may not see at home or on the news.
Right.
And we have a lot of community-related events. Annually, we have open houses at all of our divisions. We also have, lots of community-related activities where people can volunteer with us, which allows them to get a little bit of the curbside view of it. Many of them are community-oriented activities.
Of course.
But and sometimes they're oriented to the pressures that we're seeing, like food insecurity, mental health and wellness, youth-related issues, seniors, older adults. Some of our diverse and ethnocultural communities have a lot of combined programs. So there's a lot of ways to do it. We often say, Carlo, to back to your point, for people's understanding is 80% of the time my officers are on the road, they're spending on non-criminal activity. So that is everything that I described.
Right.
They're all the things that cause harm. Sometimes they're conflated with crime. And yeah, our people are the 24/7 multi-tool,
of course,
along with fire and paramedics for, hey, I'm not feeling well today. I think I might harm myself. We're the ones that go and have to kind of move from the guardian mindset to what can we do upstream? How do we mitigate this risk? Right. How do we prevent it? Can we connect this person to a social service agency? So there's a wide range. I think, people often see it as the traditional traffic tickets, responding to 911 calls or crime.
Right.
There's so much more
course.
to do that. Yeah.
And so you do have an Instagram account. So if people want to follow you guys on Instagram, that would obviously be not misinformation, be perfect information, because I'm sure everything that goes in there is vetted and it's all real. So I think that's a great way for the community to be attached to you guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Carlo. We're on every platform: TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. We've got a website, X feed, any type of community. We're on the South Asian media, the ethnocultural media. We have different platforms. We have officers doing multilingual. So wherever we can try to get the word out, because it's hard, we do. And right down to the informal platforms such as the WhatsApp groups and communities.
Okay. So I guess police services have evolved, continuously evolve. Tell us a little bit about, we hear so much about the mental health crisis.
Yes.
Tell us how the police force has evolved into dealing with those issues.
Yeah, absolutely, Carlo. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. The traditional model of policing was based on sort of like a warrior mentality. Correct. We go catch the bad guys. Listen, there's a need for us to hold people accountable that are causing harm in the community. That'll always be our job. But things have shifted. The needs of the community have shifted. Mental health, addictions, all the things that are woven through our community cause a need for us to change. And when I got to Peel, one of the things I told the team, it wasn't a threat, was, hey, listen, if we don't like change, you're going to hate being irrelevant even more. And so
that's a great line.
And I think it's a transferable principle probably to your industry too, is if you try to do the same thing we did for the last 30 years.
Oh, we learned the hard way too.
Yeah, you learn the hard way. Like I said, the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. So we came from the approach of, look, what needs to change? The needs of the community have changed. And so our philosophy has to change. And I think I mentioned it earlier to you before, is that shift from that warrior mentality to a guardian mentality, to a more pro-public health approach. It doesn't always sit well with people for me to talk like that. But, I used to say, kind of tongue in cheek, if you took like policing out of the justice system and put it in the health system, I bet you we could find some really remarkable, better outcomes for people that are challenged in our community with all the vulnerabilities. And that's just a principle. That means we're looking at it differently, not from a traditional policing mentality. So that was a big shift for my organization to see. But the why in it is, it means it's a better outcome for people. If I'm at Carlo and Nisha's house every Friday night, because, like you're throwing chairs at me, I'm spinning, and the police come every Friday night. Sometimes it's mediated. Sometimes we leave in handcuffs. Sometimes, but the officers for example, are stepping over the substantive, unemployment issue or addiction issue. It's like a rinse and repeat every Friday night. So now our mentality is go on a Tuesday with one of our community officers and a community agency, not-for-profit agency, do the door knock and say, hey, Carlo, will you take the employment transition program? And hey, Nish, would you
That's fantastic.
So that is now our approach. We have it's woven into everything we do, and it's called the concept of community safety and well-being. And so that's a real significant shift. And so what that means is we're not back at your house on Friday night, right? And the
So
negative
it's
outcomes,
a huge proactive approach.
It's a complete shift in our policing mentality, and it is the lens at Peel of what we do with everything. You can take traffic, addictions, youth-related issues, senior vulnerable, human trafficking, break and enters. We apply that multi-sector approach to everything. So if we have a problem in the community, it's not just the police responding in isolation, but we're bringing other people along so we can turn the dial down on those.
Fantastic. That's good to hear. I think our listeners are really happy to hear that. Tell me a little bit about what you would like people to understand more about what you guys do every day. Modern policing, as we just discussed. What would you like people to know a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think the community needs to know that at the base level, when they need help, we will be there. But as the global and geopolitical environment continues to change, so does policing. And our ability to not just do the traditional police car shows up at your house, tries to deal with an issue. We're like a startup company. We're very Google-esque. If you think about, we've got a whole innovation infrastructure pillar that looks at how technology and solutioning can help. Crime has shifted to cyber-related, Bitcoin, the frauds. Everybody knows about that.
Amazing.
It's not the traditional, get a bounce a check or fraudulent cash. So everything's changed. For our ability, for example, to use AI to process a 911 call is there now. At one point, people were waiting on the phone to call 911, waiting for a call. Now we have AI tools that help us apply that. Automatic license plate readers, air support, drones. The technology and the complexity of policing has changed. You would see a traditional police officer flipping through a paper notebook, writing notes when you can sign for your mortgage on your couch on an iPad.
Of course. No, that's exactly right.
We're still using, so things have evolved. Now right now our body cameras have a translation capacity. If we meet somebody that we don't know what language there's a language barrier, the officer just hits the button.
Fascinating. Yeah.
It identifies the language and audibly translates in that person's language to them at the curbside.
That's fascinating.
We're responsible for Pearson Airport. We use that regularly there. AI is drafting notes for people where you don't have to use your paper. It's on their phone. At the curbside, if somebody needs a referral to a community agency, we have the ability from the officers. It's not just a plate of glass to do that. So the sophistication has now grown exponentially, and it's also our efforts to keep up with the changing pressures. Do we always meet the needs on time? Not always. There's a really busy and growing community, which is great. But we're very focused on innovation and sort of like continuous improvement.
Right. Okay, let's get into I want to talk about some leadership issues because just to draw some parallels.
Yes.
First, I want to ask you, what's it like to be the chief of police? I mean, and tell me a little bit about the relative size of Peel compared to other police forces and how big we are, and what's it like to be the chief of police?
Hey, listen, thanks for that question. I think my first thing is the chief at some points, I feel really bad saying this, it might be the easiest job because the people doing the real work are the women and men 24/7. Like right now, while we're doing this interview, there's
people out there right now doing their job.
So all the credit goes to them. And because of them, we have some successes and we build off that. My role is really just a steward of, this year, we'll probably get close to 4,000 people at Peel, policing 1.8
4,000 officers
and civilians. Civilians.
But I understand there's also a push to really increase that number. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. We've been very appreciative of the support to hire last year 300.
Yep.
And officers, we're trying to play catch up to growth that we weren't keeping up to.
Okay.
We're building 2 or 3 new police facilities to help serve the public and get to people on time. With a population unofficially 1.7, 1.8, with the largest airport in Canada, we have the largest logistics and mail hub outside of Los Angeles here, all the highways that are coming through here. The urban pressures are really tremendous here. But as I said to you earlier, I think the challenges, we look at challenges as opportunities to actually respond well, to turn it into a success. So for me, my job is to kind of just steward us, give us sort of like an aspirational end state, and make sure our people, the diminished, like the different ranks right down to the front line, are all equipped to get us there. And so, from a business standpoint, my role is to kind of say, hey, this is where we want to be. And, we have an aspirational statement at Peel Police, is to be the most innovative, progressive, and inclusive police agency. And we say the galaxy. Obviously a joke, but it's not a joke. But if you're not aiming for something,
of course.
And so those three elements, those golden threads, are woven through our entire organization. I have said it. I say, whether people getting an email, they see a talking head video from me, or if I'm standing in front of a microphone or a group of people, I weave those concepts into everything we do internally, to the point where it's so saturated, it's part of our business and strategic plan. And they all mean something. All those three elements. To the innovation piece I told you, is we don't want to be like a traditional policing environment. We want to press into spaces that we've never done before. Try new things. Let's see if we can resolve some of the issues that we're facing. The progressive side is that continuous improvement, like the non-traditional police mentality of, multi-sector approaches. The example of coming the door knock on a Tuesday morning to offer programs to off-ramp people before they're in crisis is that. And the inclusive one is that EI-based one. I really believe, and we do as a team, is that if we invest in our people and invest in those soft skills, those other skills, those leadership skills, if they're good on the inside, they're going to be good on the outside when they intersect with the public. So we're very heavily committed to not just leadership development, team building, obviously, making sure the culture of the workplace is healthy inside. There's that saying that nothing grows when it's left out on its own. That's absolutely true. If you don't nurture people and invest in them from growth, skills development, not just technical skills, but the softer ones,
right.
We end up building a really remarkable culture. So you put all those three things together, that becomes the hallmark for what policing is. And in my role, is kind of to always kind of keep thinking, what ideas can we do to offer our people so they can thrive in those spaces?
That leads me to the leadership aspect of it. Tell me, and maybe we conclude with this.
Yeah.
Tell me about what are the qualities you look for in people that work with you in promoting them to the next level? What's important to you, and what are you looking for, especially in your field?
Yeah, listen, I think like 3 or 4 principles for sure. And I would suspect they would be transferable, Carlo, to
exactly.
Your industry.
That's why we asked.
A vision-driven mandate. You can't. I think in all cases you have to have a really vision-driven mandate, and to do that, establish that. You don't have to do it in isolation. Like, I have 5 deputy chiefs. We sit and we go through a value assessment of what's important to us, which ends up boiling down to that aspirational statement. So that means no matter where you go, you're always got that. I think in our environment, in your environment, we've talked about, you and I have chatted other times about how the real estate industry has had its way to the 1990s to now the last years, is we have to be willing to change. So a transformational change mindset is absolutely critical. So that means taking the vision and operationalizing it, and having people willing to continue to walk away from what they were comfortable with is important. So when you ask me, what do I look like for people? I need people that are enablers. They're willing to get me there. I don't need to know the why not. Tell me how. Of course. If there are risks, let's understand them and let's manage them. There's an idea, and there's a video, if you search it up on YouTube, Simon Sinek does a great 2-minute synopsis of it. It's called The Laws of Diffusion of Innovation. It's from an academic in the 60s, 65. His name is Rogers. And it says if you introduce a new idea to any population, it gets received the same way. And it's all populations, group of 50, 5,000, 500,000, are mapped on a bell curve. And on the bell curve, and this is a philosophy that I've told my entire senior leadership team, and it's sort of our playbook for things. You'll always have people at the one end of the bell curve that are never going to get on the bus. They're You can call them laggards or naysayers. You can transfer this to the community too. And then there are always people at the front end of the bell curve that are, they're on the bus. They're like, I hear what Carlo's saying. I'm in with both feet. I'll take two, right? And the rest is in the middle of the bell curve. They call it the early majority and the late majority. They're kind of waiting and watching to see what's happening. They're influenced by the laggards or influenced by the early adopters.
Right.
And I've always told us, we're not going to be a police organization that sits in the middle waiting to see. I want us at the front end, always, let's try it. If it works, then get it 70% out the door and it sticks, we'll go with it and we'll refine it later. So take that into the type of leadership style we want. I'm looking for people that are willing to press into that area. Want them to know the shift from a warrior to guardian mentality. So there's all these concepts of change that are, we need change enablers, right? That are doing that. So that's another quality. The EI skills, the soft skills, a high value on measuring that versus technical skills. If you have them both, it's really amazing. So the technical, I think, as an industry, you've got down to science. Right?
Well, it's funny. I mean, like I said, our issues aren't as serious as yours, but to run our businesses, we need those qualities that you just talked about.
Yeah.
And it just transfers over to everything in any industry, and especially yours, of course. But that's why I asked that, because we're always looking for those kind of people. And when they have those qualities that you talked about, it's amazing how successful they can be.
100%. The other thing is how you deal with each other. And
for sure.
So like my style is like, tell people, and don't grow thorns. Always take the high road. If the high road's not available, still take the high road, right? And so when it comes to dealing with people, I wince. Like I have a difficult time with people that are, the dominant is to aim for conflict. And it's back to the conciliatory style of leadership that I think there's always a way to find an outcome and resolve it.
Yeah,
have communication, build some trust, do some listening. You may not resolve it completely, but the end outcome is you're better with your colleagues and you're better with your customers or the public. Question. And I'm sure, Carlo, you obviously subscribe to that. So to me, when we look at leadership growth and people we're building in our team, is I don't need somebody that's going to do the opposite. That those days are gone, right? We're building strong teams, because everything I tell you is like sort of like third floor of my building, leadership oriented. But what all the studies show is to have highly effective teams in your workplace is you have to empower them. You set the vision, let them know that you set them free. If they hit the post or fail, like no big deal. This is part of it. We're on the front end of that bell curve. And if you're at the back end of the bell curve and you're in a very traditional mindset, you're just going to be stuck in the past. And I think our industry, particularly in policing, if we don't take this approach, we're not going to be able to keep up with the public's demands.
The parallels are amazing. And I try to do that as much as I can, learning just from talking to you, and I picked up a few interesting ideas on how to deal with my team. But yeah, I mean, the parallels are there. And leadership is so important. And again, for the reasons that you said, is today, everything is changing and changing very quickly. So you've got to be on there. So listen, I can't thank you enough for being here today. I'm sure you are, to say the least, a very extremely busy person. I think it's great for our viewers to see that we're able to get your input, because you're such a critical piece in what we do every day. You're in the background, but it's still extremely critical for us to understand what you do and how you do it, because in our industry, it's very, very important. Safe communities and all those things are just so critical. So I can't thank you enough for coming. I'm sure our audience will be very appreciative of it. And I'm looking forward to do this again soon sometime.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Carlo. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.